The Anuja Factor. Anuja Chauhan is the author and advertiser. She worked in the advertising agency JWT India for over 17 years. She has written 3 novels, The Zoya Factor, Battle for Vitora, and Those Pricey Thakur Girls. Books on, the theme that we like the most, romance. And here, Anuja will basically bring to life all her star characters, the crazy ones, the fun ones, and all the memorable characters as well. So I'd like to invite Anuja on stage. She will be in conversation with anthropologist, occasional writer, and a very enthusiastic reader, Dolma Chodenroder. Could I request Dolma and Anuja to please come up? Thank you.
Sorry, okay. I am really excited to introduce all of you to Anuja Chauhan, the author of 3 extremely popular, deservingly so. I'm going to try not to gush. I'm a huge fan. Books. The first is The Zoya Factor, which is about India's great love affair with cricket. The second is Battle for Pretoria, which is about a Lok Sabha election. A lot of fun to read when there's an Indian election happening. And the final one is my absolute favorite, which I'm sure I'm not the first person to describe it this way, but it's sort of like Pride and Prejudice set in pre-liberalized Delhi, so also a lot of fun. Anuja came to writing after a very successful career in advertising. I think a lot of us are probably familiar with some of her ads. She worked with a lot of big companies like Pepsi, Nokia, Nestle. So those of you who haven't read her books have definitely enjoyed her work in that format. What else? Okay. She actually only quit her job at advertising and became a full-time writer after her second book, which is interesting, considering it must have been something to write and work in such a stressful environment at the same time. The other thing Anuja told me last night is that this is her first trip to Bhutan, but actually as an army daughter, she's lived in the Himalayas for a long time, including in Gangtok and Assam, so she appreciates our mountains very much. I'm going to start by, as Sudhin pointed out, the characters in your book are a lot of fun, and you have these wonderful female, feisty, central characters who get written about a lot, but I love your side characters too, who are hilarious and funny and just so richly drawn. So I wondered if you'd be willing to read one of your descriptions. I don't know which one. I bought both books. I don't know which one you prefer. This was one I bought also.
Hello, good morning. I'm very, very practically ecstatic to be here. I was telling Dolma last night that simply because I grew up in the big Himalayan mountains, coming here, I'm very snooty about small hillocks. So when I go to other countries or I go to the south of India and the mountains there are very tiny, I sort of turn up my nose at them and say, this is nothing compared to what we've got up this side. So just really happy about that. We've had a lovely time so far. And coming to the what Dolma wants me to read out, this is a little bit from my third book. This is called Those Pricey Thakur Girls. It's interesting because I think that we were talking so much about preserving our past and not been doing that very well in India. And which is why actually this book for me was quite a little retro thing to do, because it's set in the 80s, pre-liberalization, so it's sort of set back in the time when Doordarshan was the only channel on television, and all of India used to tune into that, and so people who were on Doordarshan were like rock stars, and everybody recognized them. So this is just a man who reads the news on DD and is therefore thinks that he's very important. It's a little piece of that. Where would you like me to start? Yeah. She turns around and is hit by a strong scent of imported aftershave. A face she knows as well as her own is bobbing before her eyes, smoothly handsome, ruddily fair, and ending in a neatly clipped beard. A voice like growling honey trickles into her ears, growling honey with exquisite diction. Well, hello there. Are you the newbie? Tibjani nods, overwhelmed. It's Amitabh Bose, she thinks, stunned. The Amitabh Bose. It is with great sorrow that I tell you that our Prime Minister has been assassinated, Amitabh Bose. The today Rakesh Sharma became the first Indian in space, Amitabh Bose. And sure, her father claims that he wears a beard to hide a weak chin. And her sister says she can't shake off the feeling that he farts sneakily and soundlessly, even as he reads so fluently and flawlessly. But still, he's famous. And he's talking to her. Yes, she replies, I'm Debjani. Debjani, he smiles. How nice. We'll be reading together tonight. They told me to look out for you. Do you want me to show you the ropes? She stares up at him, still a little stunned. The Debjani comment is strictly cheesy. But this is Amitabh Bose. Dare she take offense? He assumes she's taking him up on his generous offer, turns around and starts walking, and just like that, the spell is broken. He has a large wobbly bottom, the kind, according to her sister, who's the butt aficionado amongst the sisters, that jiggles about and actually talks to people, so that even when the bum owner's got his back to you, you don't feel socially neglected.
That was wonderful. One of the things you've said is that you draw from your real life and fictionalize it, and I wonder how many of your side characters come from your own experience. I mean, in Battle for Pretoria, there is a campaign manager who is an alcoholic kleptomaniac, and she's in charge of the money. Is that really a real person?
No, that's a real person. And there's actually, I mean, I won't go into names and stuff, but I do know somebody who put the entire campaign to be managed by a person who's an alcoholic kleptomaniac. Now, how can you put a kleptomaniac in charge of your campaign funds? But somebody actually did that. So I find that it's so easy to just, I'm a lazy writer, I just draw from life. And sometimes, you know, there's a character in Battle for Pretoria, there's this big lady who works with an NGO, and she's really muscular, and she fights for the rights of downtrodden women and stuff. And I was writing this character, her name is Hasina Bhenji, and, you know, because she like sweats a lot, she's also called Pasina Bhenji, which is, I mean, I don't know if you get it, but it's like sweat in Hindi. And what happens with her, my daughter came back from the park one day, and she told me, you know, Mama, there's this girl in the park, and there's this big strong girl with large white teeth, and she says she's really athletic. And my daughter said that, do you know what she does? She doesn't go to the beauty parlor, she bites off her underarm hair with her teeth. And it was such a graphic image, such a horrific and graphic image. It's like, she does what? And so then right away I put that for Hasina Bhenji because it seemed very correct. And I could never have thought up something like that. I couldn't have thought that up. So I do get that from there, yeah.
Actually, that's another really interesting point, is that a lot of your characters seem to be very thinly veiled versions. I'm not going to even try and guess who they are, particularly Battle for Pretoria and even in the Pricey Thakur Girls. They're just thinly veiled versions of people that we might know. And sometimes I think, oh my gosh, she got away with talking about this. Have you ever been worried or concerned?
No, actually, you know, I mean, like a lot of my books or their romances, they touch on some pretty deep and dark stuff about things that, you know, it's social commentary, sometimes it's a satire on what happens in our society. It's my comment, my take on all the stuff that we talk about, whether it's about religions or it's about caste and, you know, people's double standards that they have, the secular face you put on, or the fact that you act like you don't discriminate, but actually you do, but it's all kept inside and politically correct things are said. So I love exposing those little things, you know, and I think I get away with it because the covers of the book are like this, you know, it's like there's a heart on the cover, it's a romance novel, so I'm flying below the radar of the fringe, I think. So that seems to be working.
And that's the other thing that I found fascinating about your books, is they're very much for an Indian or a South Asian context. I mean, you use a lot of language and humor and jokes and references that are very obvious to us, but maybe less so for an international audience? That's something you think about? Who do you usually write for?
This is actually a call I took pretty early when I was writing my first novel, because there was this whole thing when I first sent it to the publishers. It was like, do you want to translate? Do you want to move this all into pure English, or do you want to put a glossary? And the call I took then was, there are more than enough people in India and more than enough people on the Indian subcontinent. I was quite happy to those people, and it's worked out well, because I'm aiming for authenticity, and I'm aiming to celebrate the way we speak and our thoughts and our flaws. So I'm happy with that, and it seems so, you know, it's a call you take, and I thought I'd just try and be true to besides, you have to be interested in what you write. I feel very strangled if I can't speak in Hindi. It's just something I need to do. So that's a call I took and said, fine, let's just forget about that. Let's write purely for people who get this.
We appreciate it, those of us who do. This sort of brings me to another question I had. You just mentioned that one of the reasons that your books haven't been criticized maybe for some of the social commentary or political commentary they're making is that they look at the covers and they think these are about women, these are for women. I wondered if you wanted to tackle the C word, chicklet, and maybe talk about gender and popular culture in India. Last night you were telling me that it was incredibly hard to sell Battle to a film production company, because I hope this isn't a spoiler, but the girl wins the election, and you were saying that was the end of the conversation when they realized that. I wondered if you wanted to comment.
Yeah, no, actually, that is true, because there's strong women characters in the book, and the thing is, my books have all been sold to various production companies in India to be turned into film. So what happens is that they buy the book very enthusiastically, and like my first book was bought by Shah Rukh Khan's Red Chillies Entertainment, and they were going to make a film. The second
that one was Zoya, right?
That's the Zoya Factor. This one is with the Anil Kapoor Film Company. The thing is that when people get into the book, like, because the Zoya Factor is called the Zoya Factor, they think this book is about the girl, her name is Zoya, and therefore I'm not the main guy, I won't play like second fiddle. This is what like the heroes are saying in Bollywood. Similarly, Battle for Pitora is about a Lok Sabha election fought with, there's a girl and a boy, and they are fighting this election against each other. And again, like, you know, the agent or the leading actor wants to know, so who wins the election? The moment you say the girl wins the election, they're like, no, I don't want to. No thanks. So that does come up. But again, it's a thing, it's, you know, it's a call you take and say, I'm going to write what I would like to write and what I think feels correct. And fine, yeah, don't make a movie. I mean, or make a movie or whatever. But I think you can't second guess and keep that stuff in your head and be writing to be turned into a popular film or whatever.
And you're actually working on some of your own screenplays.
That's right.
Are they associated with the books, or are they separate projects?
No, those are separate projects. Those Pricey Thakur Girls is being turned into a television series, a hardcore TV series that will come 5 days a week on television. So I'm quite excited about that, because in India, women control what comes on TV and men control what comes in the films. Because at home, the women are home, they have the remote, they pick the channel. At the movies, it's expensive. A ticket in a multiplex can go up to 500, 700 rupees on the weekend, so men control that. So I'm very happy to be on television with this book.
I'm looking forward to that. I had one question that came up from my Googling of you. In an interview, you talked about how your own Class 12 results were a little bit disappointing, and despite that, you went on to have not just one, but two very successful careers. And you were telling me last night that you're working with Pepsi on a campaign around the stress that comes with exam results. So I thought if you'd be willing to share a little bit of your experience of how your results from Class 12 do or don't define you. And
no, but thank you, you're being very kind. But yes, my Class 12 results were not very good at all. It was 67.5%, which wouldn't get me admission anywhere today, and even then it was very hard, and it was just a co-curriculars thing that even led me to go to Miranda House, where I did economics. But yeah, it's a huge stress point, and it shouldn't be. There's a campaign I'm doing for Pepsi this year, which very much addresses that children when they're leaving school, there's so much stress when the marks come out. There's so much stress when the admissions happen. It's so difficult. They're impossible cutoffs, 100%, 99. If a child gets below 90, the parents are so stressed that this child is going to become nothing and will end up having no career, and will be sitting in my house and I'll be like supporting him. So there's all that going on, and it's very important that we realize that marks are not any kind of an indicator of somebody's talent, and if you're self-motivated and you're passionate about something you do, that should work out just fine. And it does for so many people. And children don't believe it when you say it to them when they're stressing all night and they're studying. But the point is, 5 years on, 10 years on, you won't even remember. Nobody will ask you. It's not that big a deal. So I think it's very important we get that in, definitely.
And the campaign is going to deal with
yes, the campaign very much deals with that. It's about, it hasn't broken yet, so I can't talk too much about it. But it's been time to come out with the college admissions. But of course in a light, fun way, because I always feel that whenever you're trying to say something deep and hunky and meaningful, you'd better keep it light, especially if you're talking to the youth, because you don't want to bore people, and it shouldn't be moral science. But if you're making a point, the lightly you make it, probably the deeper it'll go. So it works like that campaign. At least I hope so. That's what you're trying to achieve with that. You'd also asked me about, you were talking about Chicklet, and I didn't actually go there. In publishing, maybe it's because it's a marketing thing. There's a lot of, they put a lot of labels on stuff, They want to put you in a box. So this is a Chicklet novel, so please, you wear lipstick, so you aren't very smart, and so you only write this kind of book, which will be read by girls who are not very clever. I mean, they try to make you small and say that this is your little box and don't move out of it. That's actually what I resent, I have no problems with the books we write, but I don't like the fact that they're categorized and they're sort of dumbed down in a certain way, which also happens, like I was telling you yesterday. I mean, there's a novel that's done incredibly well and has been read and been made into a film called The Fault in Our Stars. It's about these two children who have cancer and they're having chemotherapy and they fall in love in the hospitals. And, it's a little sad and it's quite sweet and it's done fantastically well. And now that's led to the genre being called sicklet. And it's called sicklet, and there are all these books about somebody's got this disease and someone's got this disease and they have so many days to live. And for whatever it is, I mean, I think it's very disparaging and quite insulting, frankly, because someone's written a book, and I think we should have that much compassion in us to not, going back to what we were discussing in the morning, to not disparage it by saying things like that. So for me, the labels, I resent them. I don't like them. I think you pick up a book, it's a good book or a bad book, and that's about it.
I'm not sure we have time. Okay, great. So I'm actually, as I mentioned in the intro, a huge fan of those Pricey Thakur girls, and I was thrilled to hear that your next book is going to be a sequel to it, and I think you're still working on it. Do you want to talk a little bit more about?
Yes, it is a sequel. Those Pricey Thakur girls actually is about this family. There's a judge and he has 5 daughters, and because he's a very methodical man, he's named his daughters alphabetically. So they have, their names are Anjini, Binodini, Devjani, Ishwari and Chandrakanta. So he has these 5 alphabetically named daughters, and he worries about them. One of them eloped with an Estonian and never comes in the book at all. The eldest one is very beautiful, and now she can't have children, and she's convinced it's because she's so beautiful and because she's stolen everyone's boyfriend. So she keeps trying to be good. So she's trying very hard to be good and earn brownie points from heaven. And, she's got her own little thing going on. And so it's about these 5 girls, and mainly it's about Devjani, who is obsessed with animals and knits little sweaters for penguins so that, they stay good. So that's what the first book is about. When I started writing those Pricey Thakur girls, I was actually trying to make a statement about how Delhi has changed, because this book is set on Haley Road, which is a very posh quarter in New Delhi, very close to Connaught Place, if you would know Connaught Place. And they live in a very big bungalow. And what I was trying to do was do a book about a property dispute Because what happens in families, at least all over India, is that there's always some family house that everyone is fighting over. So there's a property dispute, there are wicked uncles lurking in the sideline, there are all kinds of aunts, and there are far off relatives, there are people born on the other side of the blanket, everyone wants a cut in the house. And those court cases drag on forever. And so that's actually what I wanted to write. So with those Prasi Thakur girls, I feel I set that up. You have 5 girls. And then 20 years later, the judge is dead, and it's about what happens when everyone gathers around for a slice. Block of apartments comes up, and everyone has an apartment in the place, and it can go to a very happy ending. And we say, okay, fine, there are more of us now, and this is the new way of life, and just deal with it and move on. So also just trying to capture the way the city landscape and thinking and way of life has shifted, through this time period. That's a book. I'm struggling with it because there's so many people and so many sisters and a romance which I'm trying to keep going. So.
When can readers like me expect to see it?
Oh God. I'm hoping to finish on the 1st of July, so hoping to get the book out by the end of the year.
That's good. I don't know if there's any questions from the audience. I don't want to hog my time with Anuja. I know there's some people who have read it. All right, then I'm going to continue to hog my time here. No problem.
No, just when you're making ads, I made a few also, about a sort of a theme, like studying and all the rest. Isn't Pepsi a bit of a shadow product to do it with, rather than a Maggi or some food product? You know what I'm saying? Just because Pepsi is not a healthy thing to have. That's all.
And Maggi is healthy.
I keep, or something like that. Because I keep having advertising agencies come to me saying, we did an ad for Pepsi, but they don't have the depth to do a sewing machine, for instance. Because Pepsi is just a product you have put away, not healthy for you. But I'm just wondering how connecting a social message with that.
Well, okay, so one thing, firstly it's not for Pepsi, it's for PepsiCo, which includes very healthy products like Tropicana, orange juice and Quaker Oats. Okay, that's one side of it, but a much larger side of it, that as a brand, Pepsi is associated with the youth, and these are primarily youth issues, so it's about the target audience. Our sewing machine is a very worthy product, but I don't think that's the correct thing to talk about exam results and, Yeah, so but I think it's because it's a youth product, and these are youth concerns. That's really what you're trying to build. And again, this comes back to the same thing of just because I'm chiclet doesn't mean I'm dumb. Just because I'm Pepsi doesn't mean I can't have a heart and a soul and worry about exam results. So that's what I would push back and say to you.
Anuja, I'm sorry I haven't read either the Zoya Factor or Spicy because I promised you I would read one. But I really enjoyed, despite all my big reservations, I come from the same planet that gentleman who just came from. And I was all prepared to blast your book when I was asked to review Battle for Pitora. I have to tell you, I enjoyed it so much. And the kind of language that you forged, I still remember Bhain's Cafe. Would you like to speak about that, please?
Thank you. Yes, I know your review. I was like on cloud nine when I read your review, so thanks. No, Bhain's Cafe is actually like Bhain's is buffalo in most of North India. And Nescafe, of course, is coffee. And this girl is, she's a very like posh Bombay girl, and she goes into the village where her grandmother fought an election. And the grandmother tells her, now you come here and you fight an election. And, be like a dynastic thing, taking it forward. And when she gets to the village, she's like, oh my God. She asks for coffee, and when the coffee comes, she's like, ew, it's Bhain's Cafe. Because it's made with such thick, sweet buffalo milk and just a little sprinkling of coffee, and it's not at all what she wants because it's not at all Starbucky or whatever. So that's how she calls it Bhain's Cafe, and people have found out that she likes coffee. So wherever she goes, it's like, oh, you like coffee, you don't know tea. And there comes the Bhain's Cafe, and she has to chuck it down and be nice about it. So, yeah, I mean, it just... But that's also, I suppose, advertising training. You know, I mean, it's the curse of that work is to be catchy and bubbly and so on. So that's where that phrase came from. And again, I'm translatable, so I'm happy to sit in my English box and be there. Thank you.
Anuja, I'm going to ask a technical question. Writer to writer, how do you write? I mean, do you is your mind constantly like a magpie collecting things, collecting people, images, quotes, things like that, or do you sit down to write and everything comes together?
No, but I really like that word. It's so correct. Yes, it is a very magpie mentality. You're wandering around, you're listening, and you're sort of trying to stick things in. I do that. And then, of course, when you sit down to type, you sort of open your little box full of these colorful things and try and fit it in where you think it will work. And of course, you can't let the tail wag the dog, So just because you've got like one little funny thing to say, you can't write a whole chapter around it. But if it happily fits in, yes, I do tend to pull out my bright, shiny things and put them in there. Or, yes. Like very recently, there was this really funny thing that happened. This lawyer from Meerut came to visit my parents, and he came up, to my apartment, and he had like a couple of drinks and got nice and high. And my parents were like, "So how will you go back? I mean, you had a few." And he said, "Oh, I've got a driver." And we were like, "Okay, fine, So we walk you down to City Hall, and we walked him down, and he stood there, and he pulled out. He was like a really rustic character. And he pulled out a phone and he said, "Yeah, bring the car." And all. No, bring the vehicle. He said, like he told the driver to bring the vehicle, and then this man came up on a scooter with a helmet, with another helmet. And this gentleman got on behind him and said, "Bye," and he drove off. It was so cool. So, you're like, that's going into a book. That's awesome. So yeah, that answers that. Yes, question.
We only have 2 more minutes, maybe time for one more question.
I haven't read your book, but I've enjoyed listening to you. How would you suggest, because you've written a few, that one starts reading your book?
Oh, well, here's the thing. You always hope that your latest book is your best and that you're improving as a writer. So I would advise you to start with the latest book, Those Pricey Thakur Girls. I would say that because you just hope that. And then his type also. No, actually, my latest book may be your type because it's all about this big sewing unit.
You don't even know me. How do you know?
No, but I know a little bit. I mean, I know what you do. And in the house that BJ built, which is the next book coming up, there's this girl runs a big tailoring unit, and she has all these lady tailors who work for her, and they all have very fancy machines, and they're always saving money to get more. Yeah.
How many hours a day do you write?
That depends on whether my children are in school and college or who's home and stuff. Yes, I'm living with 3 teenagers. I'm a very brave person nowadays. So when the kids are out of the house, I try to write 10 to 4. They come home at 4. And then at night, what I usually do, I mean, if I have a routine, I would write 10 to 4. And then when everyone goes to sleep at night, then I pull out my laptop like a dirty secret once they're all asleep and just sort of review what I wrote and polish a little. That's when I'm in good nick, But sometimes I just let it slide for a while and then go back to 10 to 4.
I think we don't have any time left, but for those of you who haven't had a chance to read Anuja, all her books are available outside. I've hogged 3 of those Pricey Thakur Girls, but I think there's 2 copies still left. So you should rush out. But thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuja and Dharma. We have a tea break now, but before that, just a few announcements. There's a session change for the afternoon Taj session, Traveler's Eye.